Broadcasting live from our studio in Boston with presentations from prominent industry vendors, Solutions Review presents Data Demo Day, a virtual trade show for data management and analytics.
I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and welcome to another Data Demo Day. Today we're going to look at two solutions that solve the deeper challenges organizations face when implementing data analytics and business intelligence systems. Specifically, we're going to dig into a couple of companies that are delivering next-level data discovery and data replication solutions that power analytics tools with the best available data inputs in complex environments. First up is Octopai, a metadata management platform that leverages automation to get the full story on your data. It's cross-platform, so you can see the entire BI landscape, and it's in the cloud, so it can be up and running quickly. And joining us today is CEO and co-founder of Octopai, Amnon Drori. Amnon, thanks for being with us.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
Well, it's great that you're here. Before we get into your demo, when I get a chance to talk to a co-founder, I'm always curious. What was the problem you were looking to solve when you decided to start Octopai?
I'll have to go a couple of years back. I remember in the previous company that I was working with, I was going to this management meeting showing off that we had acquired 35 new clients in the past quarter. But unfortunately, the CFO was sitting next to me showing the same report showing that we had acquired only 22. And the CEO was looking at the both of us, two executives, and he was saying, how come this guy is saying 35 and this guy is saying 22? That's 13 new clients differences on a $500,000 deal on average. Somebody owes me $4 million in this room. And that was the funny part. The sad part that it took us about 3 weeks to find out that something had happened in the BI that eventually led to the fact that my report was better or more accurate than the CFO. But 3 weeks we had to wait for the final result.
Well, I think that's a perfect jumping off point. And when I come back, we'll get into a QA session. But really, right now, I'm going to let you get at it and give your demo, and we'll talk to you in about 30 minutes.
Great. So thank you for the opportunity. So I'm going to start off with a couple of slides just to give you some perspective about Octopai. When you look at the typical organization, at least from the enterprise perspective, there's hundreds and thousands of data consumers, what we call data users, who take decision based on data. And this is not new. It has been for years all along. The problem is that shipping data from the data sources, meaning where the applications actually exist, to the data consumers or the data users, in most cases runs through a very smart team that is called business intelligence team. This is where I was kind of related to. The problem is that when you ship data from the data sources to the data consumers, the data runs through a couple of things that involve ETL tools, data warehouse tools, analysis services tools, and reporting tools. And to make it a little bit more spicy, they are probably ensembled with different vendors. So you can see in this type of a landscape, Microsoft and SAP and Teradata and Snowflake and Azure Data Factory and Tableau and Qlik and Sysint. I mean, so many different vendors. And at the end of the day, the BI is responsible to run the data from the data sources through all of these tools until that business user will be able to see a certain data point, which happens to me. And in most business users are not even aware of the complexity of shipping accurate data from the data sources to the data consumers. And as you would see, there are so many reports in typical organizations that run through a lot of BI platforms like ETLs and data warehouse and reporting tools involving hundreds of applications. And not all the data runs through the BI landscape. And this is kind of the value chain. This is a supply chain of taking a single piece of data all the way to the reporting tool. And if you would talk to those organizations and ask them, what is it that you spend so much time every day analyzing this BI landscape, they will tell you, here are some of the questions. Where's my report? I don't know which tool runs that specific report, which happens to me as well. Why or where did the error come from? Why am I expecting to see $39,000 commission where I only get $27,000 commission? What's my EBITDA? How many patients do we have? What is our revenue? What is the sales cycle? What is customer references? And so many different questions that through the past 4 years, we've been helping organizations, our clients, to answer some of these questions. So even regardless to what infrastructure you have, you probably recognize one or two or three or even some more questions that you see in front of you that probably you ran through in your business life. The problem is that it takes a long time to try to be able to answer those questions by analyzing the data movement process within a very complex environment in the BI. So here's one question or the first question I would like to ask the audience. And this is some of the questions that we also involve within our clients. Here's the first question to you. What's your data team's biggest challenge? If you look at your everyday operation in the business intelligence, servicing your business people, is that around the BI and analytics daily operation, understanding where data is coming from, where is it going because of data error? You want to understand the impact of changes because there's a lot of business requests coming in and you would like to respond to them on a timely fashion? Is that has to do with more of migration or moving from one system to another? Case in point that we've been involved with, moving from an on-prem reporting tool to a cloud reporting tool, moving from an old data warehouse system to a more modern one. So how do you shift that data or structure from an old system to another system? What about compliance? You're under GDPR, CCPA, you have been required to mask some of the PIIs, not only in the data sources, but also in the BI. So where do I find data element or a column called age or gender or credit card or first name or address? Where does it exist within my entire landscape? And what similar names that specific data element carry that I need to be aware of not to be exposed under regulations or compliance as part of my auditing? And most important, something that happened recently has to do with data dictionary, data catalog, BI catalog, business glossary, pick a name. If I'm a business user and I want to create a report that has to do with an address, what does it mean, an address? Is that a shipping address or a billing address or the headquarter address? What does it mean, an address or a client or a customer or product name? So all of this information exists in the application on the IT side, but also on the BI side. So I'm going to move on, and we're going to share with you the results later, but thank you for answering or addressing or sharing your view about these questions. So here are some of the most popular business intelligence systems that we have been analyzing, and we've seen that popularly being an inherited part of BI infrastructure. Some of this you recognize either you are planning on using or existing usage today, or enriching your BI environment with what you already see here and additional things. And today, each one of these systems is mainly managed separately. And what we've decided to do is to look at the problem in a different way, in a disruptive way. Why do we need to invest so much time in understanding each one of these tools separately, rather than having a system or a platform that will analyze everything for me? I'm interested in results. I'm interested in getting answers, not to work so hard in being able to be in a position to get answers. And this is where this idea came from. Why do we have to analyze each system separately? That each system is doing different things to the data of different vendors. I want to have a magical button where I'm going to click something that will analyze the entire landscape for me. I want to get results. So this is where analyzing the entire BI platform enables you to enjoy the analyzed information and shrink wrap it in capabilities that are very, very deep and very good tools to continue manage and understand insights about your BI landscape. One of them is data discovery, just to understand where columns exist, where the data exists, where calculation exists, where formulas exists, where certain field or data element exists if you want to mask them. And this is really critical because you want to find out where all the data elements exist, and you don't want to miss each one of them or some of them. If you want to understand the relationship, the data flow, or the data movement process between all of these tools and in a single tool individually, and understand where does data come from and where is it going. In our past 4 years in the business, we've recognized four key questions that are being asked every day. Where data is coming from, where is it going, where does it exist, and what this data means when I look at this data. What should I expect when I'm asking to see a certain data element? And this is the data lineage. You probably heard about it. Our view of data lineage is that you have to really deep dive, dig, and understand the metadata through its facets, the administrative metadata, the technical metadata, the business metadata, and combine it with a very rich BI environment of different vendors. It becomes almost impossible to really automatically manage this in a very, very easy way. And another outcome of understanding the information about the data, or what we call metadata, is the ability to explain, when you look at a certain data element, what do you mean? What do you see? And this is where the business glossary and a lot of good things that can come out of it. So we believe that you should not look for a single capability, rather than look at the BI and as a whole and equip yourself with different tools that collectively help you to manage your BI landscape. This is the data dictionary, the data discovery, the data lineage, the business glossary, the version management of metadata as it frequently changes, and even more importantly, understanding insights about your BI that will help you understand things that you don't know that you don't know. So in short, we collect metadata or information about the data from a variety of tools. We're native cloud, which means that from your perspective as a client, you need to invest only 20 minutes to extract the metadata, upload this to your Octopai instance, and then within 24 hours to 48 hours, you get an access to use our tools like data lineage, discovery, catalog, to help you address these use cases, mostly done by these wonderful role people. And we do this cross-platform, easy to start on the cloud. Let's continue with some interesting use cases, which I will be more than happy to hear your opinion about. If you've ever ran into this kind of use case, and I distinguish between the business lingo and the BI lingo. And the BI is, I need to be able to trust data. They don't understand what they see, and they want to make sure that they are taking the right decisions based on that data. In the BI language is, how do I find the exact ETL process that relates to landing the data on that BI report? Now, in some cases, you have such a complex environment that it's really difficult to do reverse engineer from the report backwards. So here's a question for you. How long do you think, or when you look back at the type of lineage things that you needed to create it manually or semi-automatically, take a report and understand where data is coming from in a rich environment. How long did it take you, or in average, how long would it take to create lineage capabilities or relationship map from the report through the transformations, through the database tables, and all the way to the exact name of the ETL? Would that take you a few minutes, few hours, few weeks, few months? Obviously, it has to do with the number of data sources or metadata sources that you have in the BI. And it would be great to understand your input. I'm going to show you some results in our demo in a second. Take another couple of seconds to answer that, but it will be really, really interesting. We're doing some surveys about that, and I can share with you also some other results. Thank you for that. We're going to move on to the next use case. Here's another one, understanding the impact of changes in advance. Let's say that you've been asked to ship more data from the data sources by updating a certain ETL to enrich the reports upstream. or you need to modify an ETL, or change the columns in the map as part of the ETL. And you probably want to understand the possible impact of those changes upstream. So this is something that we translate from the business lingo. I'm looking at my report, I don't see the data, I'm missing data. I know additional data had been created in the CRM and the marketing. Could you ship that data to my report? And then I need to do reverse engineering to understand from the report which the exact ETL I need to modify, and then do an impact analysis if I were to change that ETL. This is the BI lingo. So, another question for you, last one. If you need to make changes in a field in an ETL or database, how long would it take you to identify all the places that this data element exists, and also to map all the direct and indirect relationship? If you were to change, modify, mask that specific ETL or data element, and you want to map all the possible implications that you need to be aware of prior to doing the changes, almost in the design phase. So, take another few seconds to answer that. Thank you. And we can move on. So what I would like to do in the next 5-6 minutes is to take some of the use cases that we've talked about, understanding where data is coming from, where is it going, in practical terms, reverse engineer lineage, forward lineage to understand possible impacts, and we can go on and on with use cases. So I'm going to jump right over to our demo, and probably by now you can see 3 round circles. What you see in those circles is the following. We have a very small demo environment that is 1/10 of a typical client that we have. In here, you can see a collection of metadata that have been extracted, centralized, and analyzed by Octopai. This entire process to extract the metadata takes from you about 20 minutes, and for us, 24 hours to analyze, and then you get a link and you start using Octopai just like you see right now. In this case, you can see almost 400 ETL processes from several tools that are shipping data from the data sources and store them in about 2,500 database tables and views, SQL Server and Oracle and others. And there are 24 reports being generated in multiple BI tools, reporting tools, that are using the data that is stored in those 25 data warehouse tables and views. And that data is being shipped by running 389 ETL processes. Let's start the demo. So a business user called Doug is opening a ticket or address his data analyst. I'm looking at a report called customer products, and for some reason I'm expecting to see data and I don't see it. Can you find out if the report is showing all the data that I was expect to see? As an analyst, I would ask him, what is it that you expected to see? He said, I don't know. I know that there's more data. I know that we sold products, but I don't see them in my report. In the BI language is, I need to find the report where it's being generated throughout all of these reporting tools. I need to understand the structure, and I need to understand where the data within the data warehouse stores the data that then lands on that report. So let's start our journey. First of all, let's find the report. I'm going to go to the reporting section. I'm going to ask Octopai to find the report called Customer Products. So as I'm typing in, and again, all the landscape had been analyzed. You just need to browse Octopai. I found the report right here. But still, the second question is, which out of the 2,500 database tables and views? And the third question, which out of the 389 ETL processes are collectively relating to landing the data on that report? I don't want to do this manually. I don't want to talk to the DBA. I don't have any recordings or documentation. So you would go to Octopai and click a very nice button called Lineage and see what happens. So what you see here that took about 2 seconds is a full mapping of where the data came from all the way from the ETL processes colored in light blue, which DB objects are actually storing the data, tables and views, and which reports I was looking for to do reverse engineering. What you see here is that this report is based on a view, and that view is based on these tables and views that are storing the data that runs through running an ETL in data stage, SSIS, and Informatica. If you have more than one ETL vendor, or you have multiple ETL processes gathered in one ETL, that makes it very, very difficult. If you don't have the right person that knows this specific journey or documentation, this may take you a few good hours to work with. Let's continue with the use case. When we ask our clients about this type of like 5 or 10 or type of multi-relationship data maps, they tell us that it will take anything from 3 to 4 hours to even a day. So then why would you want to do this manually? The second question that we ask them, how often do you do that? They say many times a day. So again, why would you want to continue to do this manually? Let's continue with the use case. Here's a different one. I'm using this report and I'm looking for additional data that I know had been created in the CRM. And I decided to enrich this ETL. So is that the ETL that is the source ETL to that report? Do I need to update the map inside this ETL? Is this the source ETL or the targeted ETL? So by clicking on that, I can see two arrows. This arrow is telling me that Octopai identified automatically things that are happening prior to that ETL, which means that this is immediately not a targeted a source ETL, it's a targeted ETL. By clicking on the button, I can go back and understand where the data landed in this ETL as it came from these tables. And by clicking on this one, I can go even further and understand the ETLs that are associated to landing the data on this table, which is a targeted ETL here. And I can go back and back and back. So my ability to navigate within this landscape, within the BI, is just a click of a button. And this is what we wanted to have as an experience. Let's continue with the use case. What if I've decided to change this ETL right here, this one? So I've decided to enrich the ETL by changing the columns. But I have a question. Is that the only report that is going to be impacted by changes that I'm planning on doing in this ETL? In other words, what would be the impact of changes that I need to know in advance prior to doing any changes that then may impact things that I'm not aware of that will be impacted by those changes? Clicking on here, I would click the lineage going forward, this button, and see what happens now. So now I get a different picture, which is a little bit more scarier. This ETL is impacting not only this report as we initially started. This is Doug's report, how we started this journey. It impacts all of these reports that you see in front of you, and some of them are even not an SSRS report. While this one is generated in SSRS, this one right here is generated in Business Object. So two different reports being named differently, generated for two business users, probably in different departments, in different vendors' BI reports, are going to be impacted by any change that I'm planning on doing here. Without this mapping here, you might suffer from lack of information about the impact of changes, or if you don't cover this map prior to doing any design changes, you might get phone calls from users in the future asking you questions about something happened to my report. Now, this lineage right here, which is kind of a little bit more difficult, may take you a couple of days of several people in collaboration, where you can get this in 3 seconds. And you can go on and on, traveling within this space of relationship between so many different objects. Just so you be aware, if you have 1,000 ETL processes shipping data to 10,000 tables and views that are being generated in thousands of reports, you might end up mapping tens of billions of point-to-point relationship that you need to be generated them on the fly when you have an instance. Why not using an automation software that will do this for you? The last thing I want to show you in this demo, being careful on time, is that the lineage that you see here is what we call lineage between systems. So this is a relationship map between ETL, databases, analysis services, and reporting. But there's also what we call deep lineage inside that specific tool. Let's dive in the lineage inside this ETL, for example. So double-clicking on that, I'm drilling inside this bubble. And I can find, in the language of SSIS, a container. What does it contain? It contains 4 different maps that are collectively shipping data from the data sources to the database tables. If you dive into, for example, one of the maps, what you will find is that there's lineage also in the level of the column. What it means that if you ask to see the lineage here in each one of these maps, you will be needing to have a very accurate documentation of each and every one of this map. How does a map look like? Let's try to see. This is how it looks like. This is a map on the column level where you can track a certain field. Another use case, masking a field. Where does it come from? From the table sources. What transformation or transformations a certain data element is going through. Where does it flow and where does it being exchanged, all the way to the destination table, and so on and so on. So your navigation is with a click of a button. It's collaborative. You can share, you can download, you can invite people that are using Octopai to see what you see. You can document it when you need it, and again, with a click of a button. The last thing I want to show you is the data discovery. Very, very useful when you want to find where a certain data element exists. Case in point, one of the insurance companies that we end up working with wanted to find a certain data element called license plate because they wanted to make sure that it can contain additional tabs that has to do with the number of characters that represent a license plate. The only thing they had to do is, in this case, I'm going to choose another data element, and within a click of a button throughout the entire landscape, they could find where this specific data element exists in each one of the BI tools that they've been using in their own specific language, and you can drill all the way to the code line level to understand where that specific data element exists, so you can document it, you can share it, and you can understand where within the code of the SQL statement, for example, you can really expect to see that and how many times. In this case, we have found it hundreds and thousands of times in different areas within each one of these tools. The mapping is one of the most difficult, timely consuming in each one of the organizations that we end up working with. And the combination, as I said, the same metadata that you have can be presented as a discovery, in lineage, and in different ways. Oh, the last thing I want to show you, which is really cool. Here's an example of something really cool. I'm going to do the lineage here forward, and I want to show you a use case that probably you would recognize. I'm a business user of a report called Sales Report. Let's take this one. And I'm looking at my report, and I see that in this report, I'm going to do a lineage inside the business object, for example. And what I can see in my report is a column called full name. And I can see from the BI that it's a calculation of two physical data elements, first name and last name. So here's a question for you. Do you think that the full name exists only by concatenating first name and last name, or maybe I should expect to see the middle name? In order to answer this question, there are a couple of ways on manual digging, or simply go to the automatically generated business glossary, this button right here, and let's ask Octopai, after analyzing the metadata from the reporting tool, when you say full name, what should I expect to see? Here's the BO report, and what Octopai is showing you that initially the organization had created a data element called full name, and it's being created by Jeff Smith, telling you that you should expect to see the middle name as well. Here's the formula. And I should be able to expect that. It's a night and day if it wasn't designed to show the middle name, and then I have to update my ETL by identifying which ETL is relevant to shipping more data, and it could be a 2 months project. Or I can go to the glossary that indicates specifically there's an existing data element called middle name, and I can find it within Octopai in order to enrich a report without doing a project. Your ability to navigate, to understand what exists and what does not exist, and to be able to answer 4 questions. Where data is coming from? Where is it going? Where does it exist? And what does it mean when I look at a certain data element? It relies within understanding your BI. And our BI intelligence is something that we've automated in a way that will help our clients, and hopefully you, to leverage and turn weeks of work into seconds repetitively throughout the usage of Octopai. So with that said, I'll be happy to share any additional information. If you'd like to trial the product by analyzing your own metadata, as I said, 20 minutes of your time, we'll be more than happy to do so. It's like like an octopus, we're gonna fetch the metadata, we're gonna analyze it for you free of charge, so you can actually see and compare how would it look like to use Octopai versus how you've done this today. And as I promised, let's go to the poll results. Great. So if you remember the first use case, talked about, I'm gonna jump in, I'm gonna share with you this. So what's your data team's biggest challenges? Is that has to do with a regular operation, and this has to do with projects. And as you can see, the day-to-day operation is taking the most of the time of the BI, because, and it aligns with what we've been hearing from our clients throughout the past 3-4 years that kept on using Octopai almost on a daily basis. You don't know which use case you need to deal with. You don't know what the problem that you will need to deal with tomorrow, the next week. And when there is a problem, the clock is ticking and you need to respond fast. The question is, do you want to do it manually, or you want to do this automatically by using something like Octopai offers? And the second thing is modernization and understanding the data. So everybody hit all of the use cases, but the day-to-day is taking the most part of it. And this is, again, aligns with everything that we've seen so far. So thank you for sharing. Let's share the second one. The second one talked about a certain use case that has to do with how long does it take you to find a source in an error. And yeah, it takes a few hours. But when you have to do it so many times, you don't have enough hours in the day. So it varies between few hours to few weeks, depends on the complexity. But what's interesting here is that very, very explicitly you can see that it doesn't take a few minutes. This is something that is aligned with what we see. And can we pump up the last question? So the last use case talked about if you need to make a change, and oh boy, if you need to make a change, how long would it take you or to the data team collectively to understand the impact of those changes, which is the most frightening things to not to be aware of. And again, it's a line between taking few weeks to a few months or months or anything else. And at the end of the day, it not only puts a lot of burden on the BI, but it also holds up the business from enjoying the data that they really, really need. So with that said, I'm open for questions or feedback. So thank you for sharing the results.
Amnon, that was a very impressive demo. The visualization of the complexity of the data lineage that you were showing there really drives home the point of why tools like this are so necessary, and honestly why automation and the evolution of AI has really begun to change the game for these types of massive data sets. So very impressive. Question we have a few questions from the audience. One, is there a possibility to see the cardinalities between two tables?
So the answer is yes. What we do when we extract the metadata, we can do compare. So you can actually see the relationship between the different tables, but also the dependencies between them. You can either see that using the lineage or using the discovery, and we will show the cardinality of this. The answer is yes.
Well, and then another question with regard to scanner support for graph RDF databases in the future.
The answer is yes. It's part of our roadmap. We haven't seen that very popularly. As a matter of fact, when we established the company 4 years ago, we already looked at what's going to be used in the future. But when we met the market and did our product market fit, we talked to about 80 different organizations, and they told us one thing very explicit. Hey guys at Octopai, there's important and there's urgent. And what's urgent is to understand what the heck is going on in our existing landscape. And this is why we have supporting the tools that we do have today. But we already have plans to support newer and more modern BI sources as well.
So another question that we have, do you integrate with any data governance solutions?
So again, the answer is yes. Octopai is an open product in the sense of when we collect the metadata and analyze it, you can use Octopai visualization or app to understand everything that I showed here today. But this is your own, as a client, your own metadata. You can export the metadata and freely inject it to third-party tools. Some of them are data governance, some of them are data catalog. So the answer is yes.
So another question, and this might be our last question. You mentioned that there's a trial that people can easily connect with you on and get a certain amount of look at the solution with regard to their data. But one question that I would have, and it's a question I always like to ask, is so say that all goes very well. How would you suggest then that somebody go beyond that? I mean, how long does it take to implement? What's the biggest challenge to an implementation? I'm curious about that path.
Great. So that's a fair question. And if you look at the three things that we have done at Octopai is that we dare to challenge the status quo. And one of the things that identify Octopai is that we're SaaS, cloud, we're cross-platform, covering the entire landscape, and very, very simple, which means that the outcome is no implementation, no documentation required, no IT capital from your end, no professional services, and no customization, which was a big, big challenge for us. And from your perspective or the client perspective, if they would want to do a trial, this is as close as if they bought the product. They need to just download the extractors that are relevant to those BI systems of which they want us to analyze its metadata. They need to spend 20 minutes, test me, give me the chance to prove it. We've done this hundreds of times before. And once you've done with that, you just click a button, upload the metadata to your instances Octopai, wait 24 hours, and we're going to meet again with your dedicated customer success at Octopai, who will tell you or will share how to use the product just like I did it today. That's it, 20 minutes.
Well, Amnon, that's a very compelling story. We appreciate very much you sharing the Octopai solution and that fine demo. And we are very happy to have shared this with our audience. We're going to put this up on demand on our site, so anybody who may have come in late, or for everybody who registered and didn't get a chance to see it, it's going to be available on demand beginning on Monday on our site. And we certainly are going to be sharing it widely over our entire collection of BI and analytics sites throughout the rest of the year and into 2021. I know it's a challenging time. I know that your solution is probably very much in demand at the moment, given all that's going on in the world. Well, I want to thank you again for being a part of this, and best of luck as we move through this phase.
Thank you very much for having me today. It's an opportunity for us to convey our theme of get modernized, automate yourself. I know people are working from home, so it's a great platform to collaborate, and I look forward to the future. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Broadcasting live from our studio in Boston with presentations from prominent industry vendors, Solutions Review presents Data Demo Day, a virtual trade show for data management and analytics.
I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and we are back at Data Demo Day. And today we're looking at two solutions that solve deeper challenges organizations face when implementing data analytics and business intelligence systems. And specifically, we're going to dig into a couple of companies that are delivering next-level data discovery and data replication solutions that power analytics tools with the best available data inputs in complex environments. Up next is HVR, a real-time data replication solution designed to move large volumes of data fast and efficiently in hybrid environments for real-time analytics. And the good news for our attendees is that HVR just recently announced a new multi-cloud release a few weeks ago, and you'll get an early look at that. Joining us live from HVR today is Joseph Dobuzna, Global Vice President for Sales Engineering. Joe, thanks for being here.
Hey, Doug. Good to be here. Appreciate it.
Well, it's an interesting time currently to be in business. We're all working in various ways, certainly using a lot of Zoom meetings. But I'm curious, with regard to HVR, what you're seeing at the client level with regard to how people are approaching their integration challenges.
Yeah, I hear you, Doug. It's been happening already. I think what the real big difference right now is there's been an increased sense of urgency. You know, people are expediting their move to the cloud, their digital transformation. A lot of people like to call it. You know, with everyone working from home and kind of a lot of this online, you know, the face-to-faces are kind of going away, and folks are realizing, you know, I can't really go into my data center. I can't really do some things that I could still kind of hold on to before. I could kind of hold back a little bit from this cloud movement, and what we're seeing right now is just it's seriously an acceleration into that whole cloud digital landscape.
No doubt about it. I know you're right in the front lines of talking to folks who are solving these problems every day. I'm curious how HVR differentiates itself in a general way with other ETL solutions.
Yeah.
CDC.
Or CDC, yeah. I mean, we work really well with ETL, ELT type solutions, but they, you know, when we partner with them, and we've got a great partner list in that area, but it's the CDC part of that, the change data capture part, and you know, the way we differentiate ourselves from the ETL really is is that we get all the changes out of the databases. ETL solutions, for example, have a little bit of issue with getting data out if there's not timestamps. So they're kind of taking full dumps out if they just want to get the latest changes. If something gets deleted, they have to get it out twice and then do a delta on it. And when we're doing the CDC part of this, we get everything, and we can do the time series, and we make it a lot easier for the ETL to pick this up downstream on maybe some more modern analytics platform. And HVR in particular, performance is, in a word, we get into these systems that are extremely high volume. We really start in the terabyte database area and go well beyond that. And that's, in data validation, we get a little bit to the data trust side of things, our areas and security and the independence that we have between multi-cloud. We're seeing a lot of, cloud to cloud going on right now, on-prem to cloud for sure. But now we're also seeing, movement between the different clouds, and there's even some regulations coming out that kind of help some of the financial services go into this. But that's really an area, data trust, data validation, along with the performance, I'd say, just if you want a sound bite for it.
Well, I know you have a demo that you're going to share from your CTO, Mark Vanderwiel. We'll let you get at that, and then we're going to come back in about a half an hour with some questions that we've got from our audience, and then we'll wrap things up. So please take it from here.
All right, Doug, thanks.
Hello, and welcome to this recorded presentation. In this presentation, we will discuss real-time replication of SAP data to Snowflake. This is part of the technology and practice sessions, and I will be showing you a live demo as part of this presentation, which is always very exciting because live demos have a tendency that they can go wrong. My name is Mark Vanderwiel. I'm CTO at HVR, and I focus on everything technical as it relates to our real-time data replication capabilities. So, quick introduction into the technology. With HVR, we replicate high volumes of data to and from a variety of sources and targets in heterogeneous environments, dominantly for real-time reporting and analytics. The right-hand side of this slide depicts the numerous technologies HVR supports, and you'll see a mixture of traditional transaction processing databases like Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, Postgres, etc., as well as analytical data platforms like Snowflake, of course, and then there's others, Teradata, Greenplum, etc., and then data lake platforms like AWS S3, GCS, ADLS, etc. Now, from HVR's perspective, we provide modular technology. We support a subset of these logos as sources, and all of these platforms as destinations, and customers can mix and match sources and destinations as they like. For the real-time replication, we provide an end-to-end solution, which starts by data discovery on the source, creating tables on the destination using lossless data type mappings, then initial one-time load, aligned with ongoing CDC, change data capture, and continuous integration, compare and repair capabilities, and all of that, of course, rounded off with the graphical user interface to control it, as well as monitoring capabilities and alerting. So let's talk about the technology and how we perform change data capture. So from HVR's perspective, we look at the different technologies that are out there and always look for the most efficient way to perform change data capture on the technology. And then we often end up using log-based change data capture. And why is that? Because it's ideal for large data volumes. Of course, CDC, change data capture, we only move changes after we've done the initial load. So from that perspective, we already minimize the bandwidth of to get the required changes to keep the destination in sync. But then from a log-based perspective, the change data capture is asynchronous. When the transaction gets processed and the commit happens, upon committing the change is written to the transaction log, And a separate process is watching the transaction log in order to parse out the information. So from that perspective, there is no impact on transactions. And going back to large data volumes and critical production databases, that's exactly what we want, and that's what customers appreciate about the HVR technology. And secondly, HVR is transactional. So that means as we maintain the transaction boundaries into the destination system, we can make sure that there's no data inconsistencies, like unexpected situations such as order detail records without the order header or vice versa. These kinds of conditions won't happen because we can maintain the transactional consistency coming out of the source, delivering data into that destination. And then lastly, log-based change data capture, in contrast to like bulk extractions, can be performed in real time. Typically, customers configure the solution to watch the transaction log in real time and move changes into the destination as they happen. So as changes get committed, they get picked up, propagated, and delivered into the destination, enabling analytics on the freshest possible data. Now, what does that look like for Snowflake? So into Snowflake, we've built optimizations. These are transparent to the end user in order to make sure that the Snowflake database on aggregate can keep in sync with a multitude of sources. Like on the left-hand side, you see the different source technologies HVR supports. And we work with customers who literally generate more than a terabyte of incremental changes on a single database, and those changes need to flow into the destination. And in a database like Oracle or SQL Server, you'll see a lot of concurrent operations, lots of small transactions, and if you would run the exact same workload mix on a Snowflake database, arguably it's just not built for that kind of a workload. So upon delivering into the target, HVR has built optimizations. These optimizations are around the use of staging, and HVR supports both the internal and the explicit external staging areas on the different clouds Snowflake supports. And through that, we load the data into the destination, and then we use essentially micro batches to incrementally update the destination tables in Snowflake, so that we, again, from an aggregate perspective, we can manage the load on the system. Now, on the left-hand side, a couple of logos stand out here, SAP HANA and SAP ECC, because obviously for the purpose of this demonstration, we're going to focus on SAP. Now, SAP ECC is the dominantly deployed version of the SAP ERP system. It'll gradually be replaced by S/4HANA, but given the number of customers that are out there still running ECC, that's still a dominant platform that we see in our customer base. ECC can run on multiple different database types, including Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, and others, and actually also SAP HANA as well. And then the future version of the SAP applications, the S/4HANA, is only available on SAP HANA. We see a lot of customers with a mixture of these different databases, and HVR supports both the applications running on ECC on any one of our supported database technologies, as well as the S/4HANA running on SAP HANA. So now if we think about replicating SAP data, let's talk for a moment about some of the challenges that you might see from a customer perspective. So why would you even want to replicate SAP ERP data? And there's a few reasons listed here. So first of all, SAP, of course, contains valuable data. So you would want to include that data as you build an analytical environment, and you're trying to see what it takes to outperform the competition or to lower costs or to minimize risk for your organization. And because your organization invested in SAP, the organization essentially manages its primary business process by using SAP. So SAP absolutely contains valuable data that you want to include. Now, the data is sitting there in SAP, and of course, you can use SAP tools and capabilities to look at the data, but it's kind of locked up in SAP. It's it's not in Snowflake, right? For one thing, and Snowflake is not part of the SAP ecosystem. And in order to get the data out of SAP into Snowflake, SAP doesn't provide a good solution there because the SAP solutions primarily focus on keeping your data in the SAP ecosystem. And particularly in the case of Snowflake, you want to get it out of the SAP ecosystem. And then lastly, our experience is that SAP is rarely the only data source. It's more common that organizations have either other ERP systems or CRM systems, maybe homegrown systems, maybe industry-specific applications, IoT applications, social media, etc., other data sources that also need to be part of the analytical solution. So with SAP not being the only one, you look to consolidate data from multiple sources into a platform such as Snowflake. Now, how does HVR support the SAP ERP system? So first of all, on ECC, certainly the legacy ECC implementations, there's at a high level 3 different types of applications, transparent cluster and pool tables, and HVR supports all of these different types of tables. And in the case of cluster and pool tables, that's important because those tables at the database level contain most of their data in an encoded format, so you'd have to decode it on the way into Snowflake because otherwise you can't use the data on the target side. HVR provides log-based CDC from HANA. That is a unique capability that we bring to market, and that gives you exactly that low-impact, high-performance, high-volume log-based CDC that HVR is known for. And then we provide integration with the SAP dictionary. So if you added custom tables, if you added columns to your SAP deployment, then we support capturing the data out of those as well. And then lastly, and a lot of our customers truly appreciate this, is when HVR captures changes, and specifically as it relates to the cluster and pool tables, we're only decoding that data further downstream in the data replication flow, and we're not putting any extra load on the SAP data server or the database server or the SAP application servers. In fact, there's not even ABAP or BAPI, some of SAP's proprietary languages involved in order to do that decoding. So customers appreciate that because SAP, of course, being the core of the primary process for your organization is critical, and its availability is critical, its performance is critical. So with all of that said, let's focus on a demonstration. And in this demonstration, we're going to take SAP data and delivering it to Snowflake in AWS. So what does the architecture look like that we're going to demonstrate? So on the left-hand side, there's the source. This is an SAP server. This is, in fact, SAP running on a SQL Server database. It's ECC, one of the recent versions of ECC. And then in line with HVR's best practice, we've deployed an agent on this source database server. That agent will perform log-based capture for us. It will parse the logs already on that database. And then before the data gets sent on the wire, it is compressed, it is encrypted, and then it goes to the hub, which is the central control environment. Now, that hub lives physically on my desk here. And then from the hub, it'll get sent into AWS, into Snowflake. Now, again, in line with our best practices, we've installed an agent in AWS in the same availability zone of where Snowflake lives, where our S3 bucket lives, so that as we stage the data in S3 and deliver it into Snowflake, we get optimum throughput, we get optimum performance. So now for this demonstration, I thought we'll do a use case, and I'll put myself in the shoes of an end user for a moment. So here I am, I'm a data analyst, I work for an organization, and we sell product in the United States. My focus, well, we sell product worldwide, but my focus is the United States. So what I'm looking at is my sales dashboard here. So on this dashboard, I have a map of the United States. I can see where we generate most of the revenue, which is in the state of Washington, where we have other hotspots of generating revenue. And on the right-hand side, by material type, I can see what the popular products are so that I can keep an eye on the mix of products that we're selling to our customers across the United States. And then at the bottom of the screen, I have my rejected items. And the reason why, as an employee for this organization, these items are important to me is because as an employee, I need to make sure that if customers reject our items for whatever reason, once they've placed a sales order and still end up rejecting it, that I follow up as quickly as possible in order to see if we can somehow mitigate the situation so that it'll not be a complete loss of revenue. Now, this dashboard is up to date. We're querying this directly out of Snowflake, but just to make sure that we're indeed completely in sync, I am refreshing this data source once more. So we're reaching out to our Snowflake database to get the exact up-to-date information from this database. And then what we're going to do is process a change in our SAP system and then see what that means from a dashboard perspective, right? So here we are. This is our up-to-date dashboard. So let me move over and let me connect here to our SAP system. So here we go. Provide the login information. So I'm going to update an existing sales order. So I pull up the sales order initial screen. There's one particular order that I'm looking for because let's say, so now I'm in the shoes of a different employee. This customer just called us, Globex Inc., and they said that for this particular order, there's one item here, there's this server value where they indicated that the competitor provided a better price. So they provide a better price. So I record this in our SAP system. I save the change to the SAP application. And there we go, right? So let me close SAP. And then let me go back to the other end user who is watching our Tableau dashboard. And now what we're going to do is make sure again that we're looking at the up-to-date data. So we're refreshing the screen here, reaching back out to Snowflake. And what we expect to see is that we now have an additional rejected item at the bottom of the screen here, the server value that should get pulled up here shortly. And as a user for this organization, I should now follow up, and here we go, with the customer Globex Inc. To find out why they said, well, the competitor provides a better price, right? Like, and I can see here, this affects revenue in my most popular state. I can see here the material type is finished product, which is one of the more popular, but not in fact the most popular material type. So this is how this real-time data replication scenario helps this organization mitigate loss of revenue. So now let's shift gears here and let's look at Snowflake. So how did we implement this in Snowflake? Right, because, well, we're replicating data out of SAP, right? So in Snowflake, we have this area with physical tables, and this is where we have our SAP tables. In fact, we have the, here we go, right? We have VBAC and VBAP, so sales header and sales detail, and you see here all these columns that as an SAP DBA you might recognize, right? Like 4 or 5 character abbreviations, arguably relatively difficult to understand. So in this physical schema, we replicate all the data coming out of the source. In fact, one thing we do here is we're using a soft delete capability. So we've introduced a couple of extra columns so so that we know when a row got deleted for downstream processing. That makes our downstream processing a lot easier. And then on top of this, on top of these physical SAP tables, we've then built some dimensions, right? So for example, here is a customer dimension where we get company, customer number, customer ID, etc. Then if we preview the data for this particular view, in this case, we could see the data, right? And the data here, this is IDES demonstration data out of SAP. So this is an existing data set coming out of SAP. And like we have customer here, we have materials, we have reason for rejection, and then we have our fact table, right? The sales order table that has all this information. And then in Tableau, of course, we're pulling all this data together, right? Like, and if we look at the SQL for this view, you can see here how we're taking the columns out of the physical schema, how we're transforming data that SAP stores in a date field into an actual date value, so that in Tableau we can make those computations a lot easier. And then you can see here that we're joining VBAC, VBAP, VBUC, and VBUP, right? So these are the SAP tables, the physical tables that we transform into a schema that is usable to us as an end user, and then again we run Tableau against this. Now then, going to the actual topic of the technology that performs the replication. So what does it look like in HVR, right? And at a high level, here is what it looks like. And this is a topology view. Now in this topology view, we're actually only the replication flow that we're looking at is only this SAP C system here at the bottom left, the SAP Cloud system going into Snowflake, right? That is the replication flow that we showed. Now I introduced a secondary flow in this replication, and the reason for that you'll see in a minute when we look at the actual statistics for this. But then on this particular environment, I can go in and actually interact with this chart. If I get this right, then I should be able to click on this line to actually get some up-to-date information. But as it goes with some of these live demos, and there we go, it complains about not being refreshed here. So let me just try that again, right? So here we go. So trying to click on that line, but still it doesn't respond. So let's just move over to the statistical view here, where you'll see why I decided to incorporate another channel, and it looks like it's not responsive. So let me just pull up the topology again, and hopefully this time it does give me the opportunity here to interact with the chart and show you this live latency information, right? So gives me exactly what I'm looking for. And then looking at the statistical view, we can see like how did the replication flow, right? So if we look at the data by minute, and then we're going to gradually zoom in to the recent past, we can see here how the replication data has been flowing across between source and destination. We can also look at like how did the latency involve, right? So here at the start of it, we see a couple of minutes, but then replication latency was going down. And then if we look specifically for our SAP to Snowflake channel, that you can see here, right? Like a few minutes ago, as part of this recording, I replicated a row in VBAC, VBAP, VBUC, and VBUP, and that made it all the way into Snowflake, so that in Tableau, when we refreshed our view, we could get the up-to-date information, right? Now, in this dashboard gives us all sorts of information, so we can look at the number of transactions that we see flowing through the system. And of course, there's not a lot here. Then if I go back to all channels and we look at the number of transactions, we see there's actually been a lot more activity, right? So on a real-world system, this gives us lots of insights into data flowing between sources and destinations. Now, I quickly showed you the HVR dashboard here, right? So here we can see complete up-to-date information of how things are flowing, right? Like into S3, we're only sending the data once a minute. So in between integration cycles, we keep our state pending. And then, so if we look at the definition of our replication, we could see all these tables that we've included out of our SAP system, right? And here is an example of one of these monster tables, right? Accounting documents. No, sorry, this is not accounting documents. BSEC is accounting documents, right? So this is a table that in many SAP systems is one of the biggest tables, has a lot of columns. There's about 300 columns. And this data is often quite central to what your organization does. So HVR can replicate this data. As said, for some of the older ECC systems, some of the data would be stored in cluster and pool tables, and this BSEC table is one of the notorious ones that is a cluster table, which is, again, often one of the biggest tables in the system. So with HVR, we're replicating this data out of SQL Server into Snowflake, and then I highlighted before that we provide end-to-end replication capabilities, right? So we have the ability to do a one-time load, which is called the refresh, where we select source, destination, select what tables we want to replicate, and then we have the ability for bulk, for parallelism, and then we also have the ability for larger tables that we can slice the table. Now in this case I haven't selected any table, but we can subdivide a large table into smaller portions. And then also we provide a compare function, right? So at any point in time I can go in and validate if the current state on the source matches the current state on the destination. So I can keep an eye on the data quality and make sure that my analytical scenarios, that they do run on accurate data. And this is a capability that also our customers enjoy. This works on all different types of tables, including the cluster and pool tables. And like if I look at like row-wise comparison here, of course, we want to do include in-flight changes in our consideration, whether tables are in sync or out of sync. So in a nutshell, that is the HVR replication function here. So if I go back to the slideshow and quickly summarize what we've looked at and what we've seen from an SAP into Snowflake data replication perspective, high volume real-time data replication. So what HVR provides here is a comprehensive and efficient solution. This is software you install and run in your environment. Streamlined solution, less than 100 megabytes to download, and that includes all of these functions that we've highlighted, right? So that includes initial load, that includes DDL replication on most of the platforms that we support as a source, with replication into all supported destinations. The lossless data type mapping that I mentioned, the initial load capability or the one-time load, the refresh that I quickly highlighted, that is aligned with the ongoing change data capture and continuous integration. Log-based CDC, we looked at the reasons for doing that, efficiencies, high volumes, very important considerations, the fact that there is limited, if any, impact on your source database transactions, validation capabilities, and then also repair. As part of that, should for whatever reason systems get out of sync, there is a repair function then as well. And then lastly, all of that rounded out with a monitoring capability to watch data flows, see some of the statistics of the data movements, and then insights into how the replication flowed. So all of that is available as a one-box solution. We recommend the use of agents, so we support operating systems that are commonly used across data centers and, of course, in the cloud, because the cloud is absolutely the dominant destination for us these days. And Snowflake being one of the most, if not the most popular data platform as a destination for analytics these days. So I hope this was insightful to everybody. So I thank you for attending the session, and I hope you have a great rest of the show and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Comprehensive and efficient. I would say that was not only the theme for that demo, but also I think it's a good theme for some questions with Joe. Joe, are you still with us?
I am. Hey, Doug.
Excellent. So certainly data integration has been evolving in a major way over the past decade, and what we just saw was pretty comprehensive. We have a couple of questions just to follow up with regard to the SAP demo, but then I also want to get into a few more questions around how to implement and get started and so forth. So with regard to the SAP implementation, does the HVR extraction from SAP use AP code?
Yeah, Bob code. That's a common question. I'm not surprised it popped up here. The answer is no. HVR is very hands-off. It follows the kind of mantra, thou shalt do no impact to the source system or the application servers. So everything's been reverse engineered, just like the transaction logs in the database have been reverse engineered. So has the SAP data. So we do this all in line, in the pipeline, the channels we call them, and it just happens in the flow. And with that, we don't tax the systems, and we get tremendous performance increases too. And it just simplifies the whole installation. The whole stack is a lot simpler set up too.
So you're saying the HVR solution doesn't put load on the SAP application servers?
It does not. It puts none in there. We're not competing with connections with the application users itself. We do it all in line ourselves. All the data.
Go ahead.
No, I say some ways that folks who are in the SAP world, they say this, this is how you get the data out. And then if you want to, because SAP has some very coded data, and there's some good reasons they did it back a long time ago. But now those things make it difficult to get out, and you kind of have to use the SAP ecosystem to get the data out. HVR has done all that heavy lifting for you, and then just streams the stuff in real time, and we can move just huge volumes this way.
And so do you support Snowflake on other cloud platforms?
Yeah, Snowflake is, this past year they came out with Google, and they start off with AWS, and there was Azure in between there. And HVR has just been right there as soon as they released on the new platform. We support them on all the platforms, and we do the internal staging, the external staging for the folks who are familiar with Snowflake.
And what sources are you seeing being fed into Snowflake?
One of the reasons for today is SAP is a massively popular platform into going into Snowflake. This idea of being unlock your data and querying it out there, that's been hugely popular. And we see a lot of Oracle and SQL Server and some DB2 coming out of there. But we're seeing everything really go into Snowflake now. We're seeing out of Oracle Cloud pieces coming into there. We're seeing a lot of on-prem other cloud sources all feeding into Snowflake. So I mean, for us, it's really databases and data types. But it's a lot of, kind of the traditional systems that we've seen in the past, which still runs a lot of the lifeblood today, going to Snowflake, kind of hooking in sometimes your legacy systems into like a modern analytic systems in the cloud. We see a lot of that.
So I'm curious to take a little bit of a step back. The getting started with HVR. So where are you seeing, particularly maybe in the past few months, where are you seeing the traction in the market for a CDC solution like this?
A lot of places. I mean, everyone's going more real time. It's been happening for a while. I think it's getting more expedited now, and it's really for the analytics side of things. It's not so much disaster recovery and all that. It's that's been solved a while back. It's taking advantage of the new elasticity of the cloud and the new platforms that Snowflake does a very good job with. But there's BigQuery, and there's Kafka still is a big deal, and there's a lot of these systems out there that are really doing well in the cloud, and folks want to take advantage of that, but they don't want to move their entire ecosystems yet. We do have some customers that are moving the entire ecosystems piece by piece out there and going into microservices and monolithic, and we help with that too. But the first easy jump is we need some modern analytics. Let's do it in the cloud. Let's hook up our old systems and feed the cloud. And that's where we're seeing a lot of the traction. And these are systems that have been around for a while, and they've got terabytes upon terabytes of data.
And so with regard to within the organization where you have where you begin this conversation, I mean, whereabouts is it best for you to engage with folks, and where do you find these types of solutions being considered and then ultimately implemented?
Okay, well, I'll avoid the common answer for the first part. The sooner the better. But we're seeing people who are planning things, but now they have an immediate need. They have they're like, hey, we're doing this, and we need to figure out how to get there as fast as possible. So analytics, as I mentioned, is a big one, and moving up into the cloud is another one. We help with the migrations, but we tend to do a lot of the keep the data flowing even after that. So we'll have somebody who just at the DBA level coming. We'll have an architect coming. We'll have CIOs and CTOs come and look for us. And more now we're seeing partners who are tasked with taking these on. Folks who might not have known who HVR was a few years ago, and large and small boutiques and whatnot, and they just see the success that we've had at other places, and they say, hey, we want to replicate that success over here as well. So that's kind of where we're engaging. And then the areas that we're seeing, it spans, we're kind of, HVR is independent, cloud independent. It's also very much independent from the vertical. We're seeing, an uptick in financials right now. Financials are really starting to move to the cloud finally. They're a little bit later, but, we're seeing a lot in manufacturing. We're seeing a lot in logistics, telecom. So we're seeing it in a lot of these places. It's folks who are, trying to do more with less. They need to get more out of their data. They need to take advantage of these modern analytic systems and get that data in there quickly. They want to get a competitive advantage as the competition is getting pretty tough these days. And then those who kind of gotten that part, the next part of the equation is like, let's generate new revenue streams. How do we use this to kind of package this and sell this out? And we have this, can we create new opportunities?
So what we're seeing at Solutions Review is there are a lot of very easy ways for folks to test and trial some fairly complex solutions. I'm curious about how people get started with HVR. Is there a trial, a test, some proof of concept that you would recommend, or that's easy for them to engage with?
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of ways to engage. I mean, you go to our website right now, you can go do a test drive. You get it for 3 hours, and you can go through a little lab, and you get the concepts on there. And we have a lot of videos and things that'll walk you through it. We're in the marketplaces and all that, so you can grab an AMI image and AWS Speak, for example, and then we'll also help you out. We'll walk you through it. We have partners. And we'll help set it up. It's super simple setup. I mean, like as Mark was mentioning, it's less than 100 megabyte download. It's not a SaaS offering. It is a download, but it's a very small download. Unzip sets that whole thing up. That one little file supports everything we support. It would be Oracle 9, 10, 11, 12, 18. It'll support S3, it'll support Hadoop, it'll support Snowflake, it'll support Kafka. It's all packaged in that one thing. It does the initial loads and everything. So it's quickly easy to help set up. And a lot of people more now want to see it in their environments. And that's where we or a partner can come in and help you set that up and do, like, okay, show me the 500 gigabyte table that you can move over here. I want to see it. And, we'll kind of show them how some best practices and lessons learned, some things they might be bumping into that we've seen with many other customers as well.
So before we let you go, I'm curious, again, you engage with lots of folks, and you've provided a lot of guidance. given everything that's happening, but actually devoid of all that's happening, just in general, what pieces of advice would you offer to somebody who's considering moving to a more real-time solution like this?
Yeah, and I mean, just taking HVR out of the picture and just talking generally what we've seen. There's been some systems that need to go real time. Some systems can be ETL. And what we've seen is when we're pulling all these into a central location, a lot of folks, they can't really deal with their data coming at different times. That's one thing. It's like, oh, I've got this one here. I thought it was real time, but it's nightly. And so everything kind of needs to be down to the lowest common denominator. Like everybody needs to be real time is what we're seeing, because it's just easier for everyone just to run under the assumption. Is this data all up to date? Great. Because I don't want to have to merge yesterday's data with this latest up to the second data. So that's one interesting thing I've seen kind of pop out in the last couple of years. Another one is planning. I know a lot of folks are wanting to go fast, but we see interesting things when you're going into these new analytics environments, square pegs, round holes with your data. You lose a time zone, you have some rounding, you have some funny character set encoding stuff, and all these geeky things that the folks in the trenches have to deal with. And it can be a time sink if you don't kind of suss that out ahead of time. So the testing part of it, it can be done quickly, but it needs to be done so some of those folks can handle these data, the really data quality issues. You had Octopai on here earlier, and they do some interesting things with that. And it's don't overlook that. So it's that balance between how fast can we go, how fast do we not go, and then always test too. It's always best to try to test two things, because just by the comparative nature of it, you're going to learn a lot by looking at something two different ways.
Yeah, I think that advice is actually spot on. The idea of going fast but not too fast, and really thinking it through and taking the time, particularly with the complexity these days and the challenges with getting it wrong. If you have the wrong inputs, you're certainly not going to get the right analytics. So excellent job. We very much appreciate HVR participating in this demo day. We're going to take this recording and we're going to put it up on demand on our site. Certainly anybody who wants to review it, who's watching now, we certainly would make it available to them, but also everybody who might not have been able to make the actual broadcast today, and everybody that we have who are coming to all of our suite of data sites, from BI and data integration to data management as well. We're going to make that available over the next year. And so best of luck to you. Best of luck to HVR. Certainly, I think things will be interesting as we move through the rest of the year. And I think 2021 is going to be booming. So have fun with all of that.
All right. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks very much.